Welcome back to the digital nomad story of my first year as a digital nomad. My name is Cassidy Amber Chapman, and if you're just jumping in right now, or if you've been following all along, welcome. Either way, you are welcome. So, we had just ended off on a pretty traumatic note in the last video, yet again. Little dramatic. But again, if I could tell you the traumatic things, I would. However, again, not all of my story to tell, and don't have permission as of yet. So I'm just gonna say traumatic events. So traumatic events are occurring, and some of these traumatic events are not forcing me, but creating a situation where my bank account was drained and pretty quick out of nowhere. So it was like, wait, what? And at the same time, for some reason, almost all my clients got laid off in the same couple of days. It was I was like, what do I do? Like, what is happening? Clearly everything is meant to be, because yeah, I know this to be true. Now at the same time, again, I'm having this feeling of, okay, everything's taken away from me and I can rebuild it again. And although there was a part of me that did not believe in myself again, there's so much mental gymnastics that happens when you have a business. You can have months that you didn't even realize you could have that much money in a month, and then the next year, like, oh my God, what's happening? Help. It is mental gymnastics. But I will do it again and again and again to be able to help people in the way that I do. It's all worth it. However, it can be mental gymnastics, especially when you go through a sudden drainage of everything and you're wondering, you don't have a steady paycheck. It's something that you create. And if you're going through some traumatic experiences, it's hard to go out and be like, I'm gonna go create it. So it was all happening all at the same time, and it got really bad really fast out of nowhere, and it threw me off my rocker a little bit. But at the same time, I had never more faith in my life that it was just a part of the story of my journey, and that it was just, it was going to bring everything that I ever wanted. I had no idea what that was. None. All I knew was that everything was taken away from me because it was supposed to show me something that I needed to see to make my dreams come true, a blessing that I didn't understand, which now that I look back, that's exactly what happened. And also, I needed to be shown that every single dollar in my bank account can be drained, or I could lose my whole business at once, or, I mean, now we're fine, but it's just a weird occurrence to have everyone lose their job who want to stay and work with you. That's the crazy part, is they want to stay and work with you because they are loving everything. But yeah, when everything crashes and burns all at once, it was showing me that you can't take away who I am. The girl who wakes up and loves her life, the one who just gets happy from seeing a sunset or taking a sip of bubbly water with some lemon, or creating a beautiful healthy meal, or just having so much support and love in my life. I feel like the richest woman in the world just because of who I am. And so in those moments of trials and tribulations, it was a moment of faith. Yet in this convoluted feelings, there's also a mixture of, what am I gonna do? There's also the human part who is having some nervous system reactivation because things are going down and you don't know what's gonna happen or what are you gonna do. Now at the same time, my living situation needed to end immediately. Ooh. yeah. And so because of that, almost immediately, when I say immediately, I had about a month or so. And I was like, what the heck am I gonna do? Now I'm talking to a friend and I'm just blubbering in tears. And she had invited me to a group trip in Colombia for a month and a half out. Or sorry, I think it was 2 months out at this point. She was like, all right, I told you to come to Colombia, come to Colombia. And I was like, how am I gonna feed myself? How is anything gonna work out? I don't understand. I don't get it. I'm in pure tears. And she goes, don't worry about it. I know you got this. We got you. Like everyone is not gonna let you starve if you go starving. Like you're gonna be okay. Thank God for the people in my life who are continuing to support me, to continuing to root me on, who are continuing to believe in me. I mean, she sometimes, again, you have the mental gymnastics, and she's like, you got this. You know, you have a business. You're gonna be okay. Just keep going. Like, you know, you're gonna be okay. I know this feels sudden. Thank God for the people in my life. Truly. So because of the group trip, I had a very specific date that I needed to leave. Now, at this time, I'm thinking I'm about to live in Colombia for a year. That was my plan. My plan was to live in Colombia for a year and figure out and somehow come back to the US, which was my plan. Now, because I had to end my living situation and I wasn't going to have a space to live, I also needed to sell and give away. I mostly gave away things away. And give away everything that I owned. Pretty much everything except for what could fit in my 2-door car and in a suitcase. There's not a lot of room in a 2-door car. I did keep my car, but we'll see if I continue to keep it. It's been kind of a pain in the butt, but that's another story. So now at this point, I bought a one-way ticket on a credit card, not knowing how I was going to pay for food and just believing, just having pure faith. My currency at that point was faith. And it's funny because my friends now, they're like, that's the currency you live on, is just faith. And I'm like, I know. And it was so scary. I mean, buying the one-way ticket, I was in tears. I was shaking in my boots. I was terrified because I had no idea what was going to happen. And also selling everything you've ever owned and all of a sudden deciding you are leaving the country, not sure when you'll see your family next, not knowing when you're going to see your friends next, leaving a space that you've known for the last moving out of a space that you've lived in for many years, getting rid of everything you've owned since you were a baby, and y'all, it is not easy. Emotionally, I was down the drain. And I wasn't even like excited really. I mean, I was excited to see my friends. I was excited to just try something out. I knew it was something I needed to do. But it was emotionally heavy. Saying goodbye or see you soon or not know when I'm going to come back, and giving away the library of books that I had. I had read, I think, 9 books in 6 weeks so that I could give them away before I left, because I had a library of books. I'm a big reader. And it was rough. I'm not going to lie. It was really, 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 really rough. When people are like, oh, you know, that's so exciting. I was like, yeah, it's exciting. But also at the same time, I had this knowing. Leap. That's all I knew. All my gut was telling me, all my intuition was telling me, all the inner wisdom within me was just saying, leap. You don't need to know what's on the other side yet. And so I did. I just bought the one-way ticket. And of course, the next day, a huge amount of opportunities came, money came, clients started coming. It was just the next day, I'm not even joking you, I started to have income flow. So I was like, okay, I'm going to be okay. I took the leap and it worked out okay. Now, I'm going to put a little disclaimer here. The only reason that it worked out for me is because I listened to my guidance and I heard leap. Does not mean that that's the exact thing that will happen for you. But I am going to open up your portal of possibilities in your mind by telling you my story. So yes, the next day, the opportunities came, the money came, and it started flowing. And it started flowing just fine. But again, I was terrified, feeling like now that the money was even flowing, I felt like I didn't have enough money. So obviously it was an excuse. It was an excuse. I as soon as, things were starting, it was just fear. It was honestly just fear that was stopping me. So now, the day before I left, or the couple days before I left, I decided to have a see you later party with friends and family. Now, I am a person that is terrified to put events on. I was at the time. Now, I love creating events that people find connections and international events. Anyways, that's for later. But at the time, I was terrified to put people together. I felt like my different friend groups wouldn't mix well because I had so many different communities and I just didn't know if they were going to mix. So I ended up just having a little picnic see you later party. And it was, I could cry. It was the most incredible night in Boston I've ever had. All of these people, first of all, they mixed incredibly. People found soul tribe. They found connections within each other. And there was friendships that formed afterwards because of the event, because of the party. And I mean, at the end, we were all singing Adore You by Miley in the park at night in Boston. And it was just one of those moments that I will cherish forever. And so it just felt like the most incredible way to say see you later, even though at the same time I was like, I have such a good community here. What am I doing? But I left anyways. So now pretty much everything is gone. Saying goodbye to my family, not knowing when I was going to see them again. Oh, the tears that just blubbered. I mean, I was like crying. It was rough, guys. It was rough. But again, I just had this feeling that blessings are about to come beyond my wildest imagination. So I begin to get on the plane. Now, there is some roadblocks. I get on the flight. There was a connection in Miami. And then from Miami, I had my flight to Cartagena. That's where I was starting. Oh, wait. We're not going to get to the flight yet. Or I will start with the flight. So I start off with, no, we're not doing the flight yet. We're going to get to the signs and the synchronicities that was telling me to go to a specific place in Colombia. So now after I bought my one-way ticket, during the midst of the chaos, this really weird series of synchronicities just began to happen. So after I bought my flight to Cartagena, I knew that I had to pick some kind of space in Colombia that I wanted to go back to, because I needed to buy my next ticket. I knew I was going to go to Nigeria. I'll get to that point. But I had to pick where I wanted to live in Colombia. And I just knew I had to search. So for me, at the time, huge bachata dancer, okay? I am dancing bachata every night almost, okay? Going out almost every night to dance bachata. I love it. I love it. Now, I also love salsa, but bachata, it just has my heart. And so for me, it was really important to find a city that had a lot of bachata versus salsa. And I was thinking, oh, Colombia, it's all about salsa. Like, I mean, I'm going to have a great time dancing salsa, but I'm going to miss my bachata. Like, it was like, that was one of my limits of wanting to leave, was leaving the bachata scene. I'm going to be real with y'all. That was one of my limiting beliefs. And I was thinking, oh, if I leave Boston, I'm leaving bachata, because it's going to be all salsa. Now, salsa's great, but it can get tiring after a while. So I was just like, I need to find a spot that has salsa. That has bachata. Now, the next day on TikTok, after I had bought my ticket to Cartagena, and I was choosing my next ticket to go to the city that I was going to live. And the next day I saw a TikTok that came that said, Dominicano bailar bachata en Medellín, which is, basically a guy was there from DR who was dancing bachata in Medellín, Colombia. I was like, where's Medellín? Like, what is that place? And so I looked it up, and then I started doing some research of the bachata scene. Huge bachata scene there. Huge. Like, bachata is huge in Medellín. So I was like, okay, that's where I'm gonna go. That was it. I was like, that's the sign of signs. That's where I'm gonna go. That's where I'm gonna live. I don't know anything or anybody. And I was just, that's where I'm going. Just because of a TikTok. It felt like the sign of signs. Now, that day, later, I begin to think, after I had decided, hey, my friend who lives in Colombia, which, by the way, I had met in Estonia, I was like, I wonder what city she lives in, and, if she has any advice. So I end up texting her saying, hey, like, what city do you live in Colombia? She said, Medellin. And I was like, I never heard of Medellin before. But she lives there? Perfect! Oh my goodness, this is perfect! Again, felt like the sign of signs. I go out dancing that night that I had bought the ticket. And I am on the dance floor just so happy that I had chosen where I'm gonna go. And I hadn't bought my ticket to Medellin yet, but I knew that that's where I was gonna go after the group trip. So I went out dancing, and this guy comes up to me, and for some reason, on the dance floor, a lot of times you don't really talk, you just dance with different partners for every song, and you can introduce yourself and say, hey, like, where are you from, things like that, but usually don't talk. Now, I was like, blurted out, I bought a one-way ticket. And I didn't know why. It just, out of everyone that night, I just felt like telling him, some guy I randomly didn't even know. And he said, oh my God, where? I said, Colombia. I didn't say where in Colombia. By the way, my ticket was to Cartagena, but I knew I had decided that day to go to Medellin after. And he was like, oh my God, I am going to Medellin next week for a vacation. I was like, what? I had never heard of Medellin before. And now everybody, like within a span of less than 24 hours, I'm getting this piece. So I was like, can you tell me? He was telling me every place to go, the parts of the city you want to stay at, like telling me so much. And he was like, yeah, I have friends there if you need help. I was like, what is going on? This is like a weird a weird clear sign. And now at this point, I am convinced that I'm meant to go to Medellin. But I just don't understand why or what's happening. And I just took the sign and said, okay, this is a great sign. So now the next day, I am telling my friend, hey, like, I would love to sleep over today so that we can spend time together because I just decided that I'm going to move to Colombia. Again, this is what I thought. I thought I was just going to move to Colombia. And she goes, what? I was like, yeah. So that night I ended up going to sleep over. She had a date that night. I had some work to do, and then we met up at her apartment. And so I'm telling her everything as we sit down. And by the way, it was like our first date. She had met on Hinge that day. It was just a very spontaneous thing that they went out. And she goes, after I tell her everything, she goes, Cassidy, that's so weird. I said, why? She goes, the guy I was just on a date on just got back from Medellin yesterday. I was like, what? I had never heard of Medellin before. What? What is going on? And so I was like, okay, clearly now, if for all my girlies, you know, believe in the signs, the synchronicities, believe in God, universe, I was like, I hear you. I hear you. I'm meant to go. I get it. I get it. I'll follow. I will buy the ticket. Chill out. And the next day we wake up, another friend comes over because I needed to tell him, hey, I am leaving and I don't know when I'll be back. So I want to say, like, hang out with you a little bit. He comes over. I tell him the story. He goes, oh, I studied abroad with a girl. He had studied abroad in Cuba. And he said that I have a friend in Medellin if you need anything. I had never heard of it before. Now, this is a 24-hour span. There is that countless signs that I'm supposed to go. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? So the next day, I am telling a bunch of people, I'm telling my friends, and then I'm telling all my friends about like 2 or 3 days later, my friend online, he's from Canada, again, random, he sends me a picture of his friend that just got to Medellin, Colombia. And he was like, I had never heard of this place before, but my friend just sent me this picture. It was his friend in front of the Medellin sign. I said, what? At this point, I'm highly confused and feeling like, what is going to happen when I go? Uh-oh. I'm feeling kind of scared now because every sign is telling me to go. Whatever. I just continue to just keep on moving. So now I think I'm about 2 weeks or so before I leave. Something like that. It's getting very close to the end of me leaving. And I go out to dinner. So someone from Croatia, we talked about, remember that the retreat on the super yacht, if you remember that story in previous parts, I had met this awesome guy from Colorado. And so he was taking a spontaneous trip to Boston and said, hey, I would love to have dinner. And let's catch up. I want to hear, everything that you've been doing. Now, he's digital nomad. Yeah, definitely digital nomad. But he's now living in the States for a while. So where I was like, I want to hear about your travels. And he was like, I want to hear about your book. Like, all the things that we had done since then. So, we get to dinner and he was like, hey, like he has a friend in Colorado and she has a friend in Boston. And she thought that they two should meet. So he was like, can she come to dinner with us? I was like, of course. Again, spontaneous dinner, completely spontaneous dinner. He texted me that day. We went. He had just spontaneously come to Boston. And this girl, we had texted her seeing if she could come, and again, spontaneously came to dinner. So actually, she came to drinks after dinner, but we had dinner, we caught up. And when she got there, again, neither of us know her. She was like, she's so Bostonian, but she was like, you know, who are you guys? And she asked us how we knew each other. And we're like, oh, we met at a retreat in Croatia. And she stops us. She says, I went on a retreat that changed my life forever. And she was just going on for 20 minutes about how this retreat changed her life. And I was asking, hey, like, where was that retreat? She said Medellin, Colombia. What? My mouth dropped so far. I don't even think it hit the floor. I think it went below the surface of the floor and went all the way to the basement, because I was a spontaneous dinner out of nowhere. I meet a random woman who tells me a 20-minute story about how her retreat changed her life. And where was it? Drum roll, the place that all of a sudden all of these signs and these synchronicities are telling me to go. So after that night, I'm like, okay, I hear you. At this point, I had already bought my ticket to Medellin. I'm like, I already listened. I'm already going. Then the next day after that, I was hanging out with my friend, and we're looking at this old guy's, not old guy, like a guy we used to know, his Snapchat, someone she used to talk to. And we were looking in his, for some reason, it was very random. We just looked at his highlight reel. And of course, the only place that was tagged in the one story that we looked at was Medellin, Colombia. At this point, I'm like, all right, I get it. I'm supposed to go. I don't know why it's coming out of everywhere all at once within a span of a week and having 11 or so signs. I was like, I hear you. I'm supposed to go. I get it. I'm going. And that same day, a friend who I had met on a female entrepreneurship group on Facebook, I had seen that she was from Boston and that we were similar ages, and she had studied neuroscience, and I just felt like we were supposed to connect. Now, it had been months of us trying to connect because even though she's from Boston, she was living in Ohio at the time. So I didn't know if I was going to be able to see her, because at this point, I had a week left. And I was like, hey, she had texted me, hey, like, I would love to see you. And I was like, we need to do this ASAP, if not tomorrow, because I am leaving immediately to Colombia, and I'm about to leave and I don't know when I'm going to come back. So this is like your last chance to meet. And she was like, oh my God, where are you going? I just said Colombia because I was going to go to Cartagena first. And so I just always said Colombia. She goes, I think you should go to Medellin because I have a friend there who absolutely loves it. I think you should go. What? It was literally a text message that said, I think you should go. She doesn't know anything about any of the story. All she knows is I said I'm going to Colombia, and she tells me she has a friend there and that she can connect me to her. What? So at this point, I understand I am meant to go to Colombia. Like, there's sign of signs. So now in the next one, you will start to learn why. Actually, I'm loving this I'm loving sharing this story. So I'm glad we're taking this time together. And remember to be brave, to be bold, and to be who you are meant to be. See you in the next one.